Good afternoon, and welcome to the Photo News' editorial board meeting taking place live at the YMCA. We're here with the three candidates for Supervisor of the town of Monroe. My name is Jean Strauss. I'm president of Strauss News, publisher of the Photo News. We're the newspaper and website for Monroe. My co-host is Bob Quinn, managing editor of the Photo News and former managing editor of the Times-Herald Record. Before we begin, let me explain why we're hosting the editorial board meeting here and now. The town faces important issues: what to do about the theater, the future of downtown and attracting business, taxes, balance of power among various interest groups and block voting, and transparency in government. We asked the three candidates to gather in a room together because we know there's a strong interest in this election, as there should be, given the issues I've just mentioned. We felt that over the past few months, much of the discussion of these important issues have devolved into angry rhetoric, distorted spin, and an overhyped atmosphere rather than reasoned discourse. We're videotaping this editorial board meeting and hopefully live streaming it at considerable expense because we want to make the candidates' answers and their way of relating to one another available to as many people as possible in the community. As I mentioned, we're attempting to live stream this event. Should there be any difficulty with the transmission, please know that we'll also post the entire hour-long discussion between the candidates on our website, thephoto-news.com, within a few hours. Before I introduce the candidates this afternoon, let me thank Ross Maselli of the South Orange Family YMCA of Monroe for graciously offering this terrific facility for today's forum. The candidates have drawn straws for their seats at the table. On my right is board member Harley Doles, the Democratic Party nominee. In the center is Sandy Leonard, the Republican Party nominee. And on my far right is Emily Converse, the United Monroe Party nominee. The format for this afternoon's discussion uses many of the guidelines set out by the Council on Presidential Debates in 2012. Each of the candidates will give a 2-minute opening statement. We will then pose questions on different topics, many of which were suggested by readers. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. If there's a follow-up question, we have the candidate, if there's a follow-up question the candidate will then have 1 minute to answer that follow-up question. The candidates will not question one another. At the end of the hour, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Just as important as the guidelines for tonight, this afternoon, is our final request to each of the candidates and to your supporters that the focus for tonight be on the issues that Monroe faces. And while we know there are personal differences and preferences, our tone today will be one that's respectful and civil. Let's begin. Sandy drew the straw to start. Opening statement.
I'd like to thank the Photo News and the Y for hosting this debate. It's a lot of work to organize something like this, and it is appreciated. As supervisor, I've been able to serve our community and give something back to the place where I grew up. That's the reason I ran 22 years ago, and that's why I'm running today. I've been a member of our community for 67 years. Born in Manhattan and raised here in Monroe, I went to kindergarten with my husband, dated him through high school, graduated from Monroe in 1964. We've been married for 48 years with 2 children and 2 grandchildren, all Monroe Woodbury students. I attended Orange County Community College and Russell Sage. I worked in Manhattan for over 20 years and had management, consultant, and business ownership experience. Believe me, I know what it means to have to make a payroll. Additionally, I belong to 8 community-based organizations ranging from the Community Foundation to the Arts Council. My proudest contribution to the town, besides fiscal responsibility, which is always first and foremost, are the 107 acres of parkland and open space acquired without raising taxes, as well as our most current acquisition, which is the island in Round Lake that we secured as a community donation, and I think the future will show that this will be the gem of our park system. Thank you.
Emily, you're next.
Thanks. I would also like to thank the Photo News for hosting this event this afternoon, and thank you, Bob Quinn and Jean Strauss, for moderating. This is a defining moment in Monroe's history. The United Monroe Party was born from the urgent need for change and representation for all of the citizens. We watched as our town board made the reckless purchase of a 6-cinema multiplex for $880,000. We attended board meeting after board meeting only to be ridiculed, shouted at, and threatened by our elected officials. Week after week, our questions to the town board went unanswered. What started out as a movement to save our movie theater turned into so much more. A light was shown on the uncivil, unaccountable, irresponsible behavior, and they didn't like that. They quickly began their offensive, which included armed guards at town board meetings, removing public comment, and most recently spreading outright lies about the United Monroe Party. United Monroe is made up of Democrats, Republicans, and independents who have come together because we understand that in order to gain fair, accountable civil government, we must vote as one. The leadership in just one of the municipalities within the town of Monroe is responsible for electing the current town board. It's time for the rest of Monroe to have a say. It's time for a town board who cares, who's invested in the community, and most importantly, who really listens to the needs of the taxpayers. It will be my honor to serve the people of Monroe. I hear stories every day from people who grew up here and remember the good old days with the movie theater, the bowling alley, the wonderful shops, and the community feeling they enjoyed. And for the newer residents, I would love to listen to your ideas about how Monroe can become a better place to live and raise your family. Most importantly, the business of the town must be done in front of the public eye, with public input. Transparency is key. We do not want to spend $1 of your money without you being invited to the table. I look forward to working for you.
Thank you. Harley.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Harley Bowles, and I was going to read a prepared speech, but after listening to my colleague, Supervisor Leonard, who I've had the pleasure of working with for many years, and now Emily Condors, who is new to us, I'll make a brief introduction, and I'll try to set the matter as straight as best I can. My name is Harley Doles. I'm the acting supervisor and councilman for the town of Monroe for approximately 8 years. 3 of those years, I've been the acting supervisor. I'm married. I have triplets, as many of you know, 8 and 10. I also was fortunate to be able to raise my wife's sister's boys when she passed away unexpectedly about 20 years ago. We moved up here. My children were frail. I had medical issues, and Monroe gave both myself and my family a new lease on life. You folks welcomed us into your world, and since that day, I've been trying to provide a better world as best as I can as an elected official to my friends and family members here in the town of Monroe. Whether they be from the village of Monroe, the village of Kiers Joel, the village of Harriman, anywhere. They're all considered members of my family, members of this community, and under God's watch, members of his clan. I've watched how accusations have been made over and over again, some with merit, some without merit, and wanton and neglectful in many, many ways. And I've wondered, why have we gotten to this point? And I look and I say, because sometimes the easiest thing to do is get together and just ask a question, and hopefully, eventually, with a little bit of prodding, you'll be able to get an answer. I'm here tonight to help provide those answers. I'm helping tonight to be able to answer, as Jean Strauss and Bob had said, ask some of the tough questions that we're prepared to be able to address for the benefit of the residents of Monroe. Thank you very much, and folks, I look forward to both of you in this very candid and very open debate this afternoon.
Thank you. Harley, let's begin with you for the first question. Let's talk about the Monroe Theater. Was the purchase of the theater a good idea, a bad idea, and why?
The Monroe Theater was absolutely an extraordinarily great idea. Rick Colon came to us with that idea, and again, as we said earlier, he was the guiding force in convincing the town that this was going to be an exceptional opportunity to be able to provide the residents of Monroe with something that probably no one could ever expect, not in this kind of economic day that we live in. We had heard that the Paramount Theater, for instance, in Middletown, which is owned by the city of Middletown, was working hard with the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency, to be able to provide funds to be able to open a movie theater. And here's a chance for us to be able to get a similar type of opportunity for the residents. When we finally realized that we had purchased it, we were thrilled. We went immediately to the library that Friday afternoon, Dan Burke and myself, and spoke with Marilyn McIntosh, excited that the idea that we would be able to provide an opportunity for them to be able to use the theater where they had been unable to use it in the past with their property that they had purchased for $750,000, the dental building, a couple of years earlier.
I have to cut you off.
My apology.
Running kind of long. Sandy?
Well, the theater. Think about it. When is the last time any of you went to the movies? Do you know who owned the theater? I don't think anybody cares. Let's just get it open and show films. As for the tax rolls, when we use the building fully, our other buildings will go back on the rolls. I probably shouldn't even be talking about this issue. Our attorney's probably having a heart attack. Emily sued us, and this issue is still in court. We bought the theater with good intentions for municipal purposes and a cultural center that included showing movies. Let's use the building for positive purposes and help bring business back to the downtown area. And by the way, it happens to be exactly the same thing that Middletown is doing with the Paramount Theater. Was it a good deal? I think at $880,000 it was, based on the fact that the Mill Pond, right across the Mill Pond, the M&T Bank building, just sold for $6 million. There are many other points to be made about the theater, and I'll try to answer any other questions that I can.
Thank you. Emily?
Thank you. The purchase of the theater was a tremendous error for the simple reason that the town board had zero public input to purchase this building. They admittedly did it by deciding the night before at a budget meeting to purchase a building at auction the next day, and were prepared to spend up to $1 million. They like to use the Paramount Theater in Middletown as an example of a wonderfully successful theater owned by a municipality. However, it's managed by a management company, and they're not allowed to play first-run blockbuster films. Neither will the town board if they own this building and continue to own this building. They will not be able to play first-run blockbuster movies in Monroe. That would be a violation because they would be competing with local industry in Chester. That's something the board has failed to tell the public, and it's a very crucial point. They should have never bought this building without public input and without a fiscal plan for its use.
Thank you. A second question, and Emily, we'll start with you. If elected, what's your plan for the theater?
That's an easy one to answer. We would like to sell the theater to a theater operator to open it as it was intended. It's a 6-cinema multiplex theater. It's not an old crumbling building that the town board saved. They like to make it sound like they saved this building. And to respond to what Ms. Leonard said before about the litigation, we're in litigation with the town because we would like to protect the asset. We, the taxpayers, now own this building, and we want to protect the asset from a reckless town board who has zero plan. If you buy a building, or rather, if you're a business person and you want to get a loan from a bank to start a business, you need to show a business plan. You need to show revenue projections of how much it's going to cost to run a building. And this building is massive. It's 30,000 square feet. They have no plan, and they're using the taxpayers' money to fund it without a single solitary business plan in place.
Harley?
Well, we do have a plan. We've had a plan for quite a while, and it's a goddamn good plan. That plan encompasses allowing theater, live theater to come in, live music to come in, to be able to use the promenade on the first floor and on the third floor so that people can use them in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, so that non-for-profit groups will have a place to be able to use that's affordable, to have, like you're doing right now, live streaming and different forms of multimedia entertainment that's available at low cost or no cost, where and whenever necessary. In terms of selling it to a theater operator, I believe Emily forgets when Mr. Berman stood up and said, I will buy that movie theater. I will keep it open, and if I can't make a go of it, I have the right to be able to do with it what I want. He was not a theater operator. There was another gentleman, Mr. Goldstein, who was also at the auction. Mr. Goldstein said, my son is graduating from high school. I want him to run the movie theater if I buy it. These are not experienced operators, but these are profiteers, people who are willing to be able to take a risk in exchange for a much greater benefit, and that benefit is
Excuse me,
profit.
Harley. You've gone over again. Sandy?
Well, I think one of the things I just want to make people aware of when you're talking about not having public input, any municipality does not, first of all, disclose in advance the price you're going to pay at a public auction. That's like shooting yourself in the foot. But secondly, and more importantly, municipalities do not discuss property acquisitions in public because it can affect the price upward or downward, and that is not fair to the owner of the property. Now, there are many other examples with the racetrack, the library with the book garden that's right next door. These are all examples of things that happened right here in the town of Monroe that weren't discussed in advance. There is the knock that we take things like this off the tax rolls. When you take something off the tax rolls for a public purpose that's of some value to the community, there are always other ways to try to make it up. So I don't think this was a bad thing. I think it was a very good thing.
Thank you. I'm curious how each of you feel about how the village of Curious Joel and the town of Monroe can coexist. Emily?
That's a very good question. I look forward to the leadership in Curious Joel because in my view, it's not the individual citizens of Curious Joel that we're talking about, because the leadership in Curious Joel dictates to their citizens who to vote for, and that happens a day or two before the election. They're informed as to who to vote for. They're given literature with the ballot on it, with the line clearly highlighted as to who to go and vote for. And I think that's unfortunate. I would like to see a little bit more free will. And I think that would benefit everyone. I would also like to see a little bit more compromise and community-mindedness, not just for your own village, but for the community at large. I think that would be a wonderful olive branch to extend, and not just for Monroe, but for the entire region, Woodbury, Blooming Grove, Chester, all of the surrounding towns.
Thank you. Sandy?
Well, I don't know how Emily can look forward to the leadership when she ostracizes them. We have a very unique community over there, and we do have to try to work with them. And I don't speak with them regularly, but I do have conversations with them several times a year. And I believe that they are aware there needs to be some compromise, but I don't think it comes when you hit them in the head with a 2x4.
Harley?
Ms. Converse suggests that none of her candidates in United Monroe has gone over to Curious Joel to seek support. That's not true. And in the next couple of days, you'll understand why it's not true. That being said, talk to your assembly people, talk to your state senators, talk to the people that really have the spigot on dollars, on your tax dollars, and ask them where that money goes in relation to Curious Joel. Then look at our budget, your budget, the town of Monroe budget, which the state comptroller looks at every single year to make sure that it's correct. And you will not find a dollar that goes to any municipality, not Village of Curious Joel, not the Village of Harriman or Monroe, that is not accounted for. First, we can't do it. We're not allowed to do it. And second, all of the zoning, Board of Assessment reviews, building department changes, everything that we have is mandated by law and is separate and distinct from the town of Monroe.
Excuse me. Choking. County of Monroe has not been over to Curious Joel yet. We have not been invited. I think it's pretty clear at this point that Mr. Doles has the block vote pretty much locked down. And frankly, I'm confused as to why Sandy Leonard is running at all. We know that the block vote is going to go to Harley Doles. We know that the rest of the town, the United Monroe momentum, has been exploding. We've got thousands of people on board with us volunteering for our cause, and Sandy Leonard is somewhere in between. How I feel about block voting, I think it can be a corrupting element when, in this case, our town board has been elected by the block vote, and I think it, as a result, can become extremely beholden to that vote, and in our case, has been ignoring the rest of the town, in my view.
Thank you.
Everybody seems to say that we do everything for Curious Joel. I've yet to have anybody hand me a list and define what everything means. There is one thing we do with them, not for them, and that is our highway contract, which has been a subject of controversy and is another discussion. But they pay us real money for that, and it probably keeps 2 of our highway employees employed. Again, I will say, you cannot govern when you absolutely ignore 48% of the population. And I'm really glad that Emily thinks Harley has the entire vote. I would like to see what happens on election day.
Thank you. I'm curious how each of you feel about how the village of Curious Joel and the town of Monroe can coexist. Emily?
That's a very good question. I look forward to the leadership in Curious Joel, because in my view, it's not the individual citizens of Curious Joel that we're talking about, because the leadership in Curious Joel dictates to their citizens who to vote for, and that happens a day or 2 before the election. They're informed as to who to vote for. They're given literature with the ballot on it, with the line clearly highlighted as to who to go and vote for. And I think that's unfortunate. I would like to see a little bit more free will, and I think that would benefit everyone. I would also like to see a little bit more compromise and community-mindedness, not just for your own village, but for the community at large. I think that would be a wonderful olive branch to extend, and not just for Monroe, but for the entire region, Woodbury, Blooming Grove, Chester, all of the surrounding towns.
Thank you. Sandy?
Well, I don't know how Emily can look forward to the leadership when she ostracizes them. We have a very unique community over there, and we do have to try to work with them. And I don't speak with them regularly, but I do have conversations with them several times a year. And I believe that they are aware there needs to be some compromise, but I don't think it comes when you hit them in the head with a 2x4.
Harley?
Ms. Converse suggests that none of her candidates in United Monroe has gone over to Curious Joel to seek support. That's not true. And in the next couple of days, you'll understand why it's not true. That being said, talk to your assembly people, talk to your state senators, talk to the people that really have the spigot on dollars, on your tax dollars, and ask them where that money goes in relation to Curious Joel. Then look at our budget, your budget, the town of Monroe budget, which the state comptroller looks at every single year to make sure that it's correct. And you will not find a dollar that goes to any municipality, not Village of Curious Joel, not the Village of Harriman or Monroe, that is not accounted for. First, we can't do it. We're not allowed to do it. And second, all of the zoning, Board of Assessment reviews, building department changes, everything that we have is mandated by law and is separate and distinct from the town of Monroe.
Thank you. Cindy, I'd like to begin with you. If elected supervisor, or in your case, re-elected supervisor, what would you do, what do you think your role should be, if any, with respect to the Cures Joel pipeline?
Oh, the pipeline. Bob, I think you already know that the town has no standing in this issue. However, I do have a very firm opinion on this. It would be better to control it than not to control it. It is always better to do it in today's dollars, because in the long run, that's cheaper. And I'll tell you this, 20 years ago, when Lou Heimbach was county executive, if we had done it then, when Lou wanted us to do it, it would be done and it would be paid for. Let's not wait another 20 years and have it cost 4 times as much. Remember, this is going to be run like a special district. If you don't use it, you don't pay for it. And it's interesting to note, recently, all the annexations in the town of Monroe, and yes, there are more than one than the Cajun annexation, there are 2 others. Every single annexation proceeding has involved water. I think that makes a very interesting point.
Sandy, if I could ask a follow-up question, how would you, as a supervisor of Monroe, control or participate in control?
We would not be the controlling factor. That would be at the county, but I would certainly encourage them to do it, because long down the road, 50 years from now, when we're all not here anymore, this issue, if it hasn't been solved now, is going to cause considerably more problems. So I would continue to encourage the county, no matter who wins, I would encourage them to go forward with controlling this issue.
Thank you. Emily?
I just want to respond really quickly to what Mr. Dole said before. United Monroe is representation for all of the citizens of Monroe. My opposition here likes to paint United Monroe Party as some kind of angry hate group, and this is part of their propaganda machine. We have no intention of excluding anyone. We just want an even playing field for all the citizens. And as for the pipeline, I think it's really important for the town of Monroe to acknowledge that the village of Cures Joel did start this project without the proper permitting. They have absolutely no idea how this is going to impact the sewage treatment plant. The studies have not been done. They're digging up the streets through Woodbury without Woodbury's permission, although they're using county roads purposefully to avoid any legal issue. And whoever wins the county level, county executive position will determine the direction. But I absolutely think it's important to urge people to play by the rules and do their due diligence environmentally.
Thank you. Harley?
Well, if the next county executive is going to determine the direction, then why are we getting involved in something which is a determination by that county executive? That being said, we have our own problems with pipelines. We have Water District 14. That's a pipeline that's been abandoned and neglected by, in many ways, the town board, the Village of Monroe board certainly, the PSC, different agencies, the county. These are 100 units that was part of a private water system. Sandy, correct me, it's the name of the old...
Mr. Zadoff
Mr.
used to
Zadoff.
own several in Monroe.
And finally, after a year plus of going back and forth to the PSC, a year plus creating with the comptroller's office, we put together a plan which is going to allow the town of Monroe to be able to take jurisdiction over that water district. And after 4 years of them being on a boil alert, a water boil alert, next week it's going to be lifted. That's the kind of a pipeline issue that we should be dealing with. The same kind of a pipeline issue that we're dealing with right now in Water District 8 and throughout Monroe. What is a problem for Woodbury is a problem for Woodbury. We have problems here. The $5 million bond that the Village of Monroe is going to have to float in the next year or two to be able to create infrastructure is going to be a cost that we're all going to have to share. And my question is, the town of Woodbury going to bail us out, or are they going to worry about themselves?
Thank you. We'd like to shift the emphasis slightly for a moment. I'd like to ask each of you a very specific question. You'll have 1 minute to respond to your question. Sandy, if you lose, can you say unequivocally here and now that you won't take another board-appointed position?
Bob, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not gonna say that. I haven't thought past the end of this election. I will tell you that I have not had any conversations predetermining that. I don't know what's gonna come after this election, but I can tell you one thing. Contrary to what Emily says, and contrary to what everybody else may be thinking, I didn't get into this election to lose.
Thank you. My question to you, Harley, is what's your objection to debating the issues in public?
I have no objections to debating the issues in public. I did have an objection to the person who was trying to create the debate itself. The young lady is a member of United Monroe. She donated money to United Monroe, and she's an active volunteer in United Monroe, and she was trying to create the debate. That is something which I sent that information to Chris McKenna of the Times Herald Record. I sent it to you, Bob, and I sent that information to the other local media in the area. How a person with a vested interest, with a bias in terms of creating a debate is allowed to be able to create the terms and the conditions of the debate and then expect Supervisor and myself to be able to acquiesce to it, I think is unconscionable.
Thank you. Emily, what on your resume makes you qualified to be town supervisor?
Previously, I was a project manager in the wireless communications industry. I managed teams of site acquisition consultants and RF engineers to acquire rooftop space all over New York City and the metropolitan area for the location of cellular equipment for many wireless carriers such as Sprint, T-Mobile, and we negotiated lease contracts for the acquisition of that space. And if I could just quickly remark on what Mr. Dole said, I'm not really sure who he's referring to in United Monroe, who is trying to control parameters of the debate, but I have been for the last few months attempting to find an organization, a nonpartisan organization to host a public debate, and both Sandy Leonard and Harley Doles refused 4 different venues for that debate, and it was to be moderated by Chris McKenna of the Times Herald Record, and we would have had absolutely no involvement in the process of the debate. We just are very interested in transparency and having the public be a part of that process.
Thank you. This is a question we'll return to the format where each of you gets an opportunity to answer the question. Turning to the issues of transparency and accountability, why was it necessary to spend $42,000 to fund the acting supervisor's position? And if elected, will you continue to fund that position? Sandy?
I didn't vote for that. I voted against the budget because of that reason. I took that salary out of this year's budget, and I won't vote for it in next year if that should come up.
Thank you. Emily?
When elected, we will absolutely not reinstate that position. That will be eliminated immediately if it does make it into the final budget, and we're not sure that it will, whether it will or not, because the budget is not finalized yet. And we find it to be an extremely extraneous position, and when we asked the justification for the position in meetings, no legitimate reason was given for it. It was frivolous, and Ms. Leonard did not vote for the position initially. However, she did vote to appoint Harley Doles. That was a unanimous decision to that position once it was created. And in a June 1st article in the Times Herald Record, she actually stated that Councilman Doles has proven himself and that she was originally against it, but then she was for it. So.
May I respond?
Harley?
First, and this is in response to Supervisor Leonard, I actually sent her an email requesting that before the budget was, her budget was put in, I requested that budget line for the acting supervisor be stricken. If Bob Quinn, and I think I sent that email to Chris McKenna as well from the Times Herald Record, please both of you check your records because I want to make sure I'm stating correctly. That I indicated that I requested that the acting supervisor's salary line be stricken for 2014. For many years, 4 men in an SUV, and I'm reading out of my text here, was the way outside work was done in the town of Monroe. Supervisor Leonard did the administrative work generally, and the acting supervisor, Don Weeks, highway superintendent Roy Montagna, the planning board chair, and his, quote, expanded duties, and the resident engineer oversaw much of the work going on in the town. Together, their additional salaries exceeded over $150,000. That is not including that of the engineer who was driving around with them. When I became the acting supervisor 3 years ago, I received no pay. I tried to handle as much work that the 4 men in an SUV did. And last year, the board decided that they needed somebody that was going to be doing the work. Sandy Leonard, I think in the June article with Chris McKenna, indicated that it was working out correctly.
Thank you, Paul. Sandy, you want to run minutes?
No, that's all right. Harley handled that just fine. I would only add that this is something that is not new. It's always been done. He was correct. I voted against the salary, but when it came down to the time that somebody had to do some of the work, Dan's retired, he does some work, but Jerry and Rick are also working full-time jobs. There had to be somebody around that was willing to pick up the slack and do it. This is not anything new, it's the way it's always been done, and that is why I went with the vote for Harley, because there was really nobody else that was going to spend the time and the energy and the effort on it.
Emily, would you like a few minutes?
I would.
Oh, excuse me, not a few minutes.
No. No other town in the county has such a position. It's a made-up position, and if you do find the acting supervisor position didn't previously exist, but it was just a stipend to $900 a year given to someone who was appointed to step in when the supervisor was not around. It's not a full-time job, the acting supervisor position. A law had to be changed to create this in the first place. And the fact that the position was handed to a council member, an elected official, who already has a salary as an elected official, as a council member, a part-time position, is unethical in my view. And if there was a need for jobs or work to get done, outside work to get done, then a job description needs to be created, and the proper channels should have been followed in order to get that work done, such as an ad in the newspaper with a specific job request and a job description for that specific work that needs to be done.
We think that's a great way to fill a job.
Yes.
I object to this strenuously, and I'm going to ask if you would let me have just one more moment of input.
Let's let Harley go for his 1 minute. when I
Okay.
come back.
I'm going to ask you folks to refer, and perhaps Chris McKenna's in the audience, perhaps he can actually refer to the exact date of the Times Square Record article regarding Roy Montagna, the previous highway superintendent. Roy Montagna had a salary as highway superintendent of $80,000 a year. I believe his final compensation was $142,000 a year. The other folks in that van, in that SUV, received tremendous amount of compensation for doing work that was needed to get done. The last 3 years, we tried to create the right environment to be able to get the work done without having to rely on the type of overhead and perhaps the redundancy that 3 people, 4 people, upwards of 5 people were doing before. Did it take time to work it out? Yeah, it did. And trying to understand exactly what we needed to do with, for example, just Water District 8. That I handled more or less on my own to a considerable extent as the outside person. Did I have help on the inside? Absolutely. I had the supervisor there and our comptroller, Peter Martin, who assisted in making sure that the figures were correct, that we're getting the work done in a cost-effective way. And I was verifying, making sure that the people that were being dislocated in the switchover from 2-inch to 6-inch mains and were suffering because they didn't have water, I was there day in and day out, Monday through Friday and Saturday and Sunday, wherever and whenever necessary, in Water District 8 throughout the entire summer to reassure them that they were going to be getting the water when they needed it.
May I? Forgetting everything else about this issue, I want to make sure that the public understands the historical perspective on this. The title used to be Deputy Supervisor. At one point, when Mike Ferricks was our supervisor, that was an appointment by the supervisor that he could make, and he was about to make it, and it wasn't going to be a board member. Those of us on the board were extremely upset by that, because the deputy supervisor gets to handle all the money in the supervisor's absence. And somebody that is not involved with the board does not necessarily know exactly what is going on. What we did was we actually did do, yes, Emily, we did do a local law, because the board at that time felt strongly enough about it being a board member. So we changed the law so that position had to belong to the board, and that's why it changed to being the title of acting supervisor.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not suggesting that the acting supervisor position not exist. I'm suggesting the full-time acting supervisor position should have never existed. And as far as the striking the job now from the budget, if the position was so necessary that it needed to be created in the first place, why are you both striking it now? Why is the position no longer in the budget? And as far as what Councilman Dulce was just saying about the water issues and all this outside work he's been accomplishing, the highway department has been decimated. They have 14 employees down to 9, and that would have been something that those employees would have done. And you state that you were saving highway jobs by maintaining and renegotiating this contract in KJ you just mentioned, and that saved 2 jobs. Well, we lost jobs in the highway department.
Okay, Harley, one more minute for you, and then we'll move on to
Yeah.
another topic.
First, the highway has not been decimated. We have, those jobs have gone through attrition. Last year, we had a number of people that worked, according to our new policy of staffing core, staffing to peak, something that, as we learn more about government, we were advised by the consultants down at the Association of Towns how to best preserve the assets and the taxpayers' dollars by peaking to staffing to peak during the times of the of snowplow activities. Regarding the water is not a function of highway. It had been for a number of years, and that was because Roy Montagna, the superintendent of highways, was also the water czar, the water commissioner. He did not have a water license, and by state law, we are required to have somebody with a New York State license. Our highway superintendent at present does not have a water license, and we hired a firm which was recommended, who's been working for the town of Blooming Grove for, I believe, almost 30 years.
Thank
He
you.
has all the requirements, and we're complying with the laws.
The next question, and I'd like Harley to answer it first. Why do you believe heightened security is necessary at town meetings?
We all remember Newtown. We all have a fairly good memory of what took place in Pennsylvania roughly two and a half months ago. We've seen misery and heartache shared nationally. We've seen it locally. We can almost taste the tragedy in our mouths. There's a gentleman who paraded around one of the town board meetings with a giant bullseye on the back of his on his back. It shook a lot of us up, and it was especially right on the heels of what took place in Newtown. The village of Monroe is very fortunate. They have a $3 million plus police force directly across the street from their village hall, and that village hall where they have their meetings also has a magnetometer. Those police are armed directly across the street, and we are way out over at the senior center. We have nobody. We have the state police, and thank God for them, but we need to make sure that we have response time, which is as abbreviated as possible. That's why I had originally suggested that we wind up having hold the town board meetings over at the movie theater, where we could wind up securing that location in an affordable way, in a realistic way, with a minimum response time by both the state police and also the village police.
Thank you, Paul. Emily?
Monroe is a safe family community. I've been to the town board meetings since last November after the purchase of the movie theater. People have been showing up at meetings in large quantities as a result of the board's decisions and as a result of the fact that people are, a light has been shown on the town board in their decisions this past year, and the theater kind of sparked that fire. People are very frustrated in these meetings. People are very frustrated, they're not being heard, they go up to the podium, they ask their question, they sit down, they're insulted often, they are mistreated, they're not listened to, they're not answered. People are frustrated. I have never once in a single meeting seen anything even remotely close to a violent outburst. People are frustrated, and it's really unfortunate that the town board doesn't understand that this frustration is caused by their very own behavior and their very own disrespect of their citizens and their taxpayers who are paying their salaries.
Thank you. Sandy?
I wasn't in favor of the security in the beginning, but in today's changing world, with all the problems we've seen, especially close to home, the court in Middletown, the court in Sloatsburg, and the shootings at the town board meeting in Pennsylvania, it is something that has to be addressed. It's not for the town board, it's for everybody that comes to attend the meetings. And I recently had someone ask me if I felt afraid, and I really thought it was an odd question, and I've thought about it a little bit. And the only thing I can think to say to that is, I don't believe that any of the people involved in any of the attacks felt afraid before the incidents. At this point in time, we all need to take precautions, and if anybody doesn't think so, I believe they're only fooling themselves.
Thank you. Next question. What do you intend to change to provide more accountability to voters and citizens? Emily?
Well, we'd like to have public comment at every town board meeting. Not just public comment, but public dialogue. We'd like to have more public hearings on decisions made by the town board. We'd like to do the business of the town in front of the public, not behind closed doors, which is often the case. I believe that adhering strictly to the open meetings law is crucial, and that's a big part of our platform, that it's your town. We're just keeping watch for you. And we want to invite the citizens to the table. And I also think that we could use the website more effectively and have agendas for meetings posted earlier and have more town information and available on the website. For example, I guess I don't have time for an example. I'll do that next time.
Harley?
Well, as you know, we have 4 municipalities, each sovereign and distinct. However, we have Channel 22, which is a negotiated access channel provided by Cablevision. We have repeatedly invited Cares Joel. They don't have TVs generally, from what I understand, but we've invited the village of Monroe and we've invited the village of Harriman to be able to host their village meetings throughout the years. They haven't taken us up on the offer, but we're looking forward to it. I think that's a good beginning in terms of creating a fairly good net of communication between the 2 villages and the town of Monroe's residents, to be able to, all of us, understand what's going on in each of these distinct but connected municipalities. We have, from what I've read, probably the longest public comment of any town in the state, it seems like, but definitely Orange County. I think there was one instance where public speaking was suspended, but that was only one time in the 8 years that I've been on this board.
Sandy?
We do have public comments at our meetings. We do have it once a month. But Dan Burke has also instituted the Citizens Caucus Hour so that anybody that wants to have an open dialogue can come an hour before the meetings and do so. As was mentioned before, United Monroe and their supporters had gotten so completely out of hand, they had a man running around the room with a bullseye on his back. Very professional. I decided it was time to take a break, and I suspended comment for 1 month. It's funny, when the camera's not on, no one acts in a ridiculous manner. I am not going to reduce the town board meetings at Monroe to the Jerry Springer show. If United Monroe can't follow the rules as candidates, I'd like to know how they think they're going to govern. And the reason for many of the attorney-client sessions was because of litigation, and most of the executive sessions were because of personnel hiring and other issues that we had to deal with.
Thank you. Sandy, I think I'd like to start with you again on this question. What plans or ideas do you have to attract business to the town of Monroe and increase rentals?
Attracting business to the town is a little different than attracting business to the downtown village. The largest area that we have as a business area to draw people to is over in the business park. That one large parcel is still owned by one person, and that will be developed if and when that person decides that he's going to develop it. I do believe that if the movie theater is opened, we can help to bring people back downtown. But I will tell you this, I think that the arts and tourism are the third largest, according to Nancy Proyek's report that comes out from the Citizens Foundation, are the third largest contributor to our economy. And while it is not actually located in Monroe, Museum Village is a part of Monroe. It was started by Roscoe Smith, who is a big part of our community. And I think we have a golden opportunity there to take some steps that would help us for the future. I also believe that our recreational opportunities need to be increased.
Thank you. Emily?
I actually think promoting Museum Village and assisting Museum Village in any way is a terrific idea, and I wish the town board had put their resources towards that instead of recklessly buying a movie theater. I would think opening the movie theater again by selling it to a private enterprise would be a wonderful way to bring more business downtown. Mayor Jim Purcell actually had the theater as the anchor of his business plan, and the town of Monroe went behind his back and purchased it. Another way to attract business is to keep the land zoned commercially. If you change the zoning from commercial zoning to non-taxable, you're not encouraging business and promoting business. When 2,100 or more of your citizens sign a petition saying, please sell this building, please sell the theater, and you don't pay any attention to them, I don't think you're helping to promote business.
Harley?
First, let's understand the Museum Village is not located in the unincorporated part of the town of Monroe. It is located in Blooming Grove. So Ms. Conver's comments obviously don't apply. The town of Monroe, 85% of its land is residential, 15% is commercial. We are not going to change zoning from residential to commercial for the purpose of being able to increase ratables at the expense of a quality of life and habitability and the value of people's homes. We haven't done it since I've been on the board. I don't expect any board to do it. This is a problem that we have, because remember, in your tax dollars, 64% of your money goes to the school taxes. 19% if you live in the village of Monroe. 19% of your taxes goes to the village tax. 9% goes to the county tax. 8%, only 8% of your tax dollars, all of your property tax, goes to the town of Monroe. That's what we have to work with, that narrow window, but we work it as best we can to keep that part of your taxes down.
Thank you. Just to check, Gene, I have a handful of more questions, but will we have enough time for?
One more round.
Okay. I'd like to ask, what will the town of Monroe look like in 5 years? Harlan?
My children will have grown up by then, and I hope the town will have grown up as well. This town is so filled with hope, so filled with promise. When I first moved up here, my children, as I think I mentioned before, were frail. I was frail. Our circumstances were frail, and gradually you rebuild. The economy rebuilt. And now you see home values in Monroe outpacing every other municipality in Orange County. That is something to be said about the integrity and the quality and the tenacity of the people that live up here and the newcomers who believe in investing in Monroe, and we believe in investing in them. And with that movie theater, we look forward to being able to provide them an extraordinary opportunity to be able to have the things that perhaps they left living in Rockland County or down in the city, and bring those same kind of venues to them as well.
Thank you. Sandy?
I think that one of the things that I would work towards, in fact, I put it on my palm card, my political literature, I would like to look for increased recreational opportunities. We just got that island in Round Lake. One of the other things that I would like to say, and I thought it might have been a question today, is that in order to facilitate improving things here at the Y, I strongly support the road going through our property as long as it's paid for by the Y, built to town standards, and is one way out. There may be a few other things that we have to work in on that, but I think that that's an important part of it. There are many, many other things that we can look forward to, and if I'm reelected, that's one of the things I'll work on.
Thank you. Emily?
When elected, I would really be interested in hearing what the citizens of Monroe would like the town to look like in 5 years from now. I think it's really important to ask those questions to the citizens, and I look forward to hearing the feedback from the people of Monroe as to what direction they'd like their town to take.
Thank you.
It's time for closing statements. Emily, you go first.
Thank you. Fair is fair, and right is right. What the town board has been doing isn't fair and isn't right. They have shown the taxpayers very clearly that they do not care and will not listen. By voting for United Monroe, you can be sure that you will be treated fairly and respectfully, that we will conduct business in front of the taxpayers whose dollars we will be given the honor to manage, that we will remove the full-time acting supervisor position, that we will drop the annexation lawsuit launched at our neighbors in Woodbury on behalf of the KJ developer, that we will hold public comment at every meeting, and not just comment, but dialogue, that we will sell the movie theater building to a private enterprise who will first-run blockbuster films and bring much-needed tax revenue and commerce to our downtown. We will, above all else, listen to the public and will remember that it's an honor and a public service to hold office and represent you. Thanks for voting for the United Monroe Party on row H on Tuesday.
Harley.
Ms. Converse, co-plaintiff in the original action brought against the town of Monroe. Peter Berman is the gentleman that she refers to as the experienced movie operator that she would like to see the property sold to. He has no experience. He has no experience. He has no experience running a movie theater. Neither was Mr. Goldstein. So far, nobody has come up to the plate that Ms. Converse has presented to be able to say, this is the person that we want. That being said, we have kept taxes down, flat, below the tax cap for 3 years. 3 years in a row, your property values have increased. 3 years in a row, we've done what we've needed to do to be able to provide the type of resources through the fund balance to be able to make sure that things don't get out of hand. We were fortunate that we were able to finally get title, or we will be getting title, to Round Lake. If you remember Round Lake Island, that was the island that was slated to become a house/helipad, and is now going to become a nature preserve for the residents of Monroe for all time to come.
Sandy.
Okay. Once again, I'd like to thank the Photo News and the Y for this opportunity. I'd just like to touch on a couple of things. I did conduct a study with the residents, and the answers I got back shined a light exclusively on recreation from their standpoint, which is why I'm pushing for that if I'm reelected. I just also want to point out that this idea of selling the movie theater is a wonderful thought, but it can't be done without a permissive referendum. The other issue I would like to just bring to your attention is that our preliminary budget was turned into our clerk this morning. There's about a 3.2% raise, and our public hearing is on November 7th. So if you want to take part in our government, come on down and let us hear what you think. But I want to let you know that being supervisor in the town of Monroe is different than in any other community because of the diversity of our population. You cannot govern when you exclude 48% of the people. Monroe needs a steady hand over the next few years. I have one opponent that's inexperienced and one that is unpredictable. I am the most experienced and balanced candidate, and I'm asking for your consideration on Election Day, and thank you.
On behalf of Bob Quinn and myself, Jean Strauss, thank you to the three candidates, Sandy Leonard, Emily Convers, and Harley Doles, for their time today. Thank you.
Thank you.